The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 138. The Wolverines move up to number 2 in this week's poll, and bowl preparations continue for Coach Brady Hoke and the Wolverines. That and more coming up on today's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Michigan has moved up to number 2 in the polls this week, and with Indiana's loss to Butler over the weekend is now the highest-ranked Big Ten team. As we all know, it's been a great start for Coach John Beilein and his team. Today, our guest on Michigan Gameday will be Wolverine beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive.com. We'll talk about the great start and get Nick's take on what has surprised him about this team and what concerns Michigan fans should have as we get ready for the tip-off of the Big Ten regular season. Next week, we'll have the first of our 2 Outback Bowl preview shows. Connor Tapp, who hosts the South Carolina podcast Half Cocked and writes for the blog Garnet and Black Attack, is going to be my guest, so we hope you will mark that on your calendar and join us. On The View from Section 17 this week, bowl preparations continue for Coach Brady Hoke and his squad. By now, we are all aware that J.T. Floyd, Brandon Hawthorne, and Will Hagerup are suspended and will not play in the game. That is very disappointing, but Coach Hoke did what he needed to do. Other than that, there isn't much news getting out of camp. At his presser this week, Coach Hoke mentioned that he is very impressed and pleased with the play of his redshirted freshman offensive lineman, and he likes the intensity of the team practices so far, but that is all we've gotten from Coach Hoke coming out of practice. A big maize and blue shout out to Coach Mark Rosen and his volleyball team. It was a great season and ended in the Final Four last weekend with a loss to Texas. Congratulations, gang. Last week, Director of Athletics Dave Brandon announced that Michigan and Notre Dame will tee it up on September 7th for Under the Lights 2. He also announced that preferred seat fees are going up for next season, and I guess that shouldn't surprise us. But great news about Under the Lights 2. Should be a great game. Notre Dame, who knows, they could win the national championship if they beat Alabama in the national championship game. So they could be coming in defending national champions, and they pretty much have their entire team back. So the hype and the intensity for that game will be amazing. Saturday night, Michigan traveled to Brooklyn, and they dismantled Coach John Beilein's former team, West Virginia. We are now 11-0 and are, at least for now, ranked number 2 in the country. I think we're in for an interesting and exciting winter following this team. I think we all feel that way. How far can this team go? On Monday, I talked to Wolverine beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive.com. We talked about that and much more. So stay tuned for my chat with Nick, coming up next on Michigan Game Day, here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Joining us today, Michigan basketball beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive.com. Nick, great to have you back on the show.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, a lot to talk about with football season just about over, basketball season really starting to heat up. And Nick, before Saturday's TV game with West Virginia, Bill Raftery, who was the analyst on that game, said if West Virginia is going to play man-to-man defense, they better be good at it.
Yeah.
It really wasn't long before you got to see exactly what he meant. Trey Burke looked like he could do whatever he wanted to against West Virginia, didn't he?
Yeah, that was, really I thought about that after the game. And, Trey's played, I'd say they played 11 games. He's played about almost close to 45 games, I think, somewhere in there at Michigan. And I think that was probably the best I'd seen. I've seen every one of them, obviously, but I think that was the best I've seen him play a college game, just because he was so smooth, and like you said, he did whatever he wanted. He finished with 27 points. I think he only missed 4 shots on 16 field goal attempts. That was one of those games where he probably could have scored 35 or 40 if he really felt like it. But this year he's more of a distributor as well. So he had 8 assists and no turnovers. I mean, he just was. He's in a groove right now that he's probably never been in, especially at this level. And it's pretty fun to watch. And for Michigan, they're reaping the benefits big time because it's very hard to defend them, obviously, when he's rolling and the rest of those guys are on fire as well.
And when you watch him play this year, Nick, I mean, looking back at last year, you saw that he was a great player, a great talent. He could score. But when you watch him this year, what a lot of analysts say, a lot of the old-timers, is when you look at a point guard, it's not only that they can score when they want to, but it's that they can distribute and make the other players around them even better. That's what you're starting to see from Trey Burke this year, isn't it?
Yeah. He Bob Huggins kind of hit it on the head after the game. West Virginia's coach. He said one thing that stood out to him, and he's seen Trey play a long time, even when he was in high school, and younger than that, being around the Ohio area. He said that Trey makes the right pass to the right guy almost every time, and that's a pretty rare quality in point guards. And that when he gets to the lane, he doesn't force something to someone who's not, maybe not capable of making a shot or not in a position to make a shot. He seems to, every time he passes the ball to someone who's going to be expected to shoot, it's to the right person almost every time. It's to the guy who's most open or the guy that has the best chance to score. And he takes his shot when it's there. But if this year the difference has been if he's even if his shot is there, but maybe it's a little difficult, he's been able to tell because he knows the offense better to tell if Nick Stauskas or Tim Hardaway or Glenn Robinson inside or someone else is open and can make something. And he seems to find, and so far anyway, he's found the right guy. Just about every time down over the last couple games. I think it's been 44 assists, 45 assists, and 6 turnovers, I think, in his last 6 games, which is pretty remarkable if you think about it.
Nick, Tim Hardaway snapped out of what was his 2 or 3 week funk with the big night against West Virginia. And we know when he's on and he's playing great D at the other end, this team seems to play at a much more elevated level, doesn't it?
Yeah, I wrote about that actually Monday morning here today, that Tim is kind of the difference, I think, or Tim is the key factor, if you will, if this team's going to reach its potential, and that potential a lot of people think is a Final Four type team that can win the Big Ten. I think he's the key to it because Burke, I think, is to a point where he's going to be at this level for the whole season. I think we'd be surprised if he wasn't. He's that good of a player, and a lot of people want to point to Nick Stauskas and Glenn Robinson, some of these other guys who are big time additions to this team. But I still think Hardaway's the reason why they do or don't have a great success this year. Because if he's, like you said earlier, it was about a 2 or 3 week slump where he just kind of, he made some plays here or there. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't what he could be or what he should be. And Michigan didn't play anyone that difficult, so they were able to overcome it. But if that happens during Big Ten play, that's kind of a problem. But if he's on like he was Saturday at 25 points, then they're almost impossible to defend offensively because they've got 2 players in their backcourt who can create their own shot at any spot on the floor. And there's really not anyone else in I know there's no one else in the Big Ten, and there's few teams in America that can say that, where they have 2 guards who could score at any time from any spot whenever they feel like it. And that also helps out Stauskas as a shooter. So you have really 3 scorers who are of high-end caliber, and that's a very rare quality. No one else in the Big Ten has that, and very few teams in the country can boast that as well. So, yeah, you're right. If Tim is at his peak of his game, then everything changes for Michigan, and it changes in a good way.
The only thing that worries me about that, Nick, is, in the second half of last season, he couldn't seem to buy a bucket at times. Then the start of this season, it seemed like that was behind him. Does Coach Beilein or anyone around the program ever offer any hints as to, why does Hardaway seem to be inconsistent and disappear for periods of time?
Well, really, I think what it comes down to is he's a pretty emotional player. He's a pretty intense guy, and the biggest struggle he's had is himself, to be honest. It's been, if he misses a shot or 2 or misses 3 in a row, he has a really hard time just putting that behind him and moving on to the next play. Whereas a guy like Trey Burke, we've seen this from him so many times, where he misses a shot or 2, it never seems to faze him. He comes back down, either makes one or finds somebody else with a nice pass. Tim seems to have he's been better at dealing with it this year than he was last year. Last year was terrible at it, where he'd have a stretch of play, maybe 10 minutes, where he'd just be not very good and that would basically sabotage his entire game because he couldn't get over it. And it's a mental thing with Tim, and it probably always will be. And it's something I think he has to just kind of work with and deal with and continue to improve at. But it seems like if he doesn't start out hot or doesn't start out engaged and into the game, it could be a struggle for him. So that's the biggest thing he needs to work on. And I'm not sure if that's anything a coach can do. I think that all comes from within. And, the joke is all the time, the only guy that stops Tim Hardaway is Tim Hardaway, and he needs to figure out a way to avoid that.
Nick, in your Monday MLive article, you mentioned that Burke and Hardaway, when they are on, there's probably no better backcourt in the Big Ten, maybe even in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And now you throw Stauskas into the mix with his shooting. When they're all in the groove, as you alluded to just a couple of minutes ago, there probably isn't a team in the Big Ten that can match up and stop these guys when they're all three on.
Yeah, that's what I touched on that again. I said I don't know how you stop them if all three of them, especially Tim and Trey, are on, and then Stauskas is making shots, because you have to make a choice at some point, right? I mean, you have to decide. Are you going to shadow a player like Stauskas who makes just about every time he's open? But if you do that, you leave the lane open for Trey and Tim to work through the lane, or do you collapse inside on those guys and allow Stauskas to stand out there wide open all night? I mean, it's a really difficult spot that Michigan's put teams in, or hopes to put teams in once Big Ten play starts. And it'll be interesting to see how teams handle it, because really good teams only, for the most part in college, really good teams only have one, maybe two very good, perimeter defenders. And they don't have three. That's really hard to come by. So if you don't have three, then somebody's going to be open and somebody's going to have a chance to make something happen. So even if what you see here with Michigan is, even if the team's having a struggling or a bad night, one of those three is probably going to be okay. And odds are two of those three are probably going to be okay. If all three of them are off, then I don't know if there's a flu bug or something going around. It would be hard for that to happen. So it just adds a different dimension of, not only did they have a second scorer this year, they had two scorers last year, but they didn't have a third. They didn't have anything even close to a third. And now they really do have a third. And on most teams, Stauskas would probably be the second best scorer. So you put yourself in a position where you've added a shooter who can also drive the basketball as Stauskas can and finish at the basket. And it just makes everything so difficult, because you have to make a choice on who you're going to try and stop that night of those three players, who also create stuff for the other two guys that are on the floor as well. So it's a very tricky situation, and I'm interested to see how Big Ten teams handle it going forward.
Well, if there's any bad news coming out of the win Saturday, it's the loss of John Horford, who dislocated his kneecap while diving for a loose ball. I noticed in your article on Monday, John Beilein said that maybe 2 or 3 weeks if it really isn't a serious injury. But if that lingers into January and February, that really could hurt, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could hurt bad. I'm not sure. We don't know yet quite what the diagnosis was. He had said that they need to get more looks at it, but he was hoping, apparently it was something that, similar to something that happened to John in the early part of the season, in the preseason, and he missed about 2 or 3 weeks and was able to overcome it. If it's the same deal and it's something he can overcome, then that's great news for Michigan. But you're right, if it lingers into January, February, then your depth takes a hit, especially up front. And really what happened is it's another lack of energy guy, because Horford had been playing very well in the 10 or 11 minutes that he'd been getting every night as far as energy. He was defending very well. He was offensive rebounding. He was doing everything that they want him to do and ask him to do. He was doing it consistently. And when he's not in the game or he's not in the rotation, that means Max Bielfeldt has to do that. And he's obviously struggled with the ankle injury, and he's apparently healthy and ready to go. But he hasn't proven, like Horford, that he can do that in extended points of time off the bench. And then it also puts a little more pressure on Mitch McGary, who hasn't been consistent this year, has had flashes of being a very good player and a very good addition off the bench, but he's still pretty raw around the edges and just hasn't had any kind of consistency to his game. He was not very good against West Virginia, and I think he sat out most of the second half because of it, and Jordan Morgan had to play the rest of the way. And really, what it comes down to is this: Jordan Morgan's had foul trouble his whole career. He's done a little bit better of a job this year handling it, but that's partially because he's had two serviceable big men behind him that can come in and give him a rest. If you recall last year, it was one and that's it. Jordan was in there, and if he got in foul trouble, they were in really big trouble. And if Jordan gets in foul trouble or something else happens, Mitch McGary, Max Bielfeldt, it was John Horford, who I think the coaching staff really trusted. They're going to have to come in and defend and get some second chance on the offensive glass, and it just hurts. It hurts not having him in there. I know he's also a guy that the team really, really likes being around. They like having him involved, and it kind of breaks your heart to see it for John Horford too, who had obviously the foot injury last year, another knee thing earlier this year. So if he has to miss any extended time, it's a bad deal for Michigan. It's a bad deal for him. It's kind of a lose-lose all around.
Our guest in our Michigan Game Day segment today is Michigan basketball beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive.com. Nick, fans are geeked, Michigan fans, that is, by the 11-0 start, and, I think everyone should be. But things are going to change dramatically in a very short period of time, just a week or so when Big Ten play starts. And there really, when you look at this schedule, there isn't one gimme, is there?
Not really. No, you're going to have to work for all of them. This league is, I think it's better than it was last year. And last year, we heard all the time about how it was as good as it's been in 10, 15 years or whatever it might have been. But I think it really is better top to bottom. And I think the bottom half, or the bottom portion of the league is actually better this year. And that's what makes everything more deep. Everybody wants to talk about the top team, Indiana, Michigan State, Ohio State. These teams, they're always, right now they're good. Everyone knew they were good. But Iowa's better. Northwestern, it looked like they might have something going, but they've taken a little bit of a dip. But Minnesota's better. Illinois has bounced back, and they're a top 10 team now. Wisconsin's still Wisconsin. Things like that. Nebraska's actually better. So you're going to have to work, I think, most every night. And what that does is it puts pressure on teams like Michigan who have the talent to do some of these things. You have to win your home games. I think that we saw that last year where Michigan wasn't fantastic on the road. They stole a few, but they took care of home court almost every night. I think they lost one game at home the whole season, and that helped them win the league title. So you have to take care of every game you have at home, and that has to be almost an automatic win, especially when you're playing in a league like this. So no gimmies at all. I think Michigan starts on the road at Northwestern, which has never been an easy place for them to play. So it's not going to be simple. Then they have Iowa, Nebraska, and then they go back-to-back nights to Ohio State, to Minnesota. So it never seems, there's never a pocket in there where you say, okay, there's a breather of a week, or there's a couple of games where it shouldn't be that big of a deal. No. That stuff, the breather stuff's about to be all over with for them, and it's going to get real difficult real quick.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's just brutal, especially on the road.
Yeah.
How many wins do you think, and this is a tough one to speculate on, but right now, to win the Big Ten Conference regular season championship, how many wins do you think it's going to take?
Oh, it's tough. Last year it was 5, 6. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think 4 losses. Anywhere past 4 losses, I think you're in trouble. So I think that puts it at 14-4. So I think I would say 14 wins would be kind of a magic number in there. If you had more than 4 losses, I think you'd have a hard time with it just because the top of the league is so good. But maybe you look back to last year where everybody kind of beat up on each other. And I believe it was, I can't remember, it was 4 or 5, somewhere in there, somewhere in the teens of wins. So, you're going to have to just kind of ride with it. I mean, Michigan, they're going to lose games. They're 11-0, obviously. They're not going to go undefeated the rest of the way. I think we can all agree on that. But I think that it all comes back to what I said earlier is you have to win your home games, and then you have to win some of these you have to win some of these road games, like at Northwestern. You can't stumble in that game. You have to win some of these road games that you are expected to win, so that when you go into Indiana or you go into Michigan State and you don't have a great night, maybe you can overcome it. You have to be able to stack these other wins that you're supposed to be able to get, especially on the road. Steal a few of those. If you play 500 on the road and you take care of your home court, you should probably win the league. I think that'd be a fair statement to say. I think I'd be surprised if a team wins all of its home league games, plays 500 on the road, and doesn't win the league. I think that would be a kind of a formula that I would expect. Maybe you could rely on for a team to win the Big Ten, but we'll see. I mean, a lot of things happen, a lot of surprises happen, and usually a lot of times the best team doesn't always win it. We've seen that happen a lot before too. So, to win the league is a big feather in the cap, but also you got to be hot going into March. Michigan really wasn't last year, and I think that's something that down the road they'll look at doing their best to change.
Well, Nick, we knew this team was going to be very good this season. Most analysts said so before the season started. But has anything about this team surprised you so far?
Yeah, I think that I was skeptical on if this was really a top 5 team going into the year, just because they had so many new parts. All 5 freshmen are on the rotation right now, and if you told me that 11 games in, all 5 of these guys would be playing considerable minutes, I would say, oh, I don't know, that's so many new faces and so many new players that have to learn the system and everything else, it would have been hard. But they haven't missed a beat. I mean, they've had great chemistry, which I wondered about with, they haven't had any adversity yet, so I guess that's helping things. But they've had great chemistry without Zach Novak and Stu Douglas. You wondered about leadership and if everything would be able to tie together in the locker room, and it absolutely has. They haven't had any issues with that at all. And I think that was the one biggest thing that I looked at. And I said there were so many new kids and new faces and new roles for some guys too. And you kind of wondered how all that would mesh. They had a ton of talent, but would it all mesh together at the right times? And so far, they haven't had any issues with it at all. They've only had, I think, one really close game. I mean, they've blown out just about everybody they've played. And that's surprising to me. John Beilein's teams rarely blow people out, and I think that's kind of telling about the talent they have. And how much of an upgrade it's been over the last couple of years. His teams rarely blow anyone out, and they've blown out people all game, every game, except for the Pitt game was close, and other than that, it's been double-digit win, or should have been double-digit win just about every other night. So just kind of the dominant stretches they've had over teams, I think it surprised me, especially with all these new faces. And obviously, like you said earlier, Mike, it's going to get harder as the year goes on, and that adversity is going to challenge some of that stuff. But so far, it's been very good, and that's been a little surprising.
Well, absolutely. Everyone's delirious with the 11-0 start.
Yeah.
Maybe already a touch of a problem with John Horford's injury.
Yeah, you got to overcome that. You got to find a way to get that big man depth back. You still have the potential to have three guys, which is huge, but they've got to prove that they can be big time players. Well,
other than John's injury, do you see anything in this team's play so far that Michigan fans, should be concerned about?
Yeah, I think it's not. I think it's the front court, and apart from John's injury, it's you're playing a guy, Glenn Robinson III, who's a tremendous talent and is going to be a very good basketball player by the time everything is done with him. He's playing the forward. He's playing power forward in a similar role to Zach Novak last year. He's an upgrade. I mean, everybody loves Zach. Obviously, he was a great guy, great player, but, Glenn's an upgrade over Zach at that spot if you're going to play small. But really, what it's going to come down to is, against some of these bruiser teams, especially on the road, you're going to have to rebound. And, Jordan Morgan's been improved this year too, but can you do it in the Big Ten? I mean, that's really where it's always, we used to talk about, a guy we used to talk about a lot before he transferred was Evan Spontrich, who would play great basketball in November, December, and then when the Big Ten play would come around, the physical play of everything would just drain him, and he would have nothing for January and February. And you have to avoid that. And they have on paper big man depth, and they have on paper, three guys in a rotation, plus Glenn Robinson, who's a terrific rebounder for his size, to be able to not just get annihilated on the glass. I think two of their really bad losses last year at Ohio State, at Michigan State, they were just abused on the boards, especially on the offensive boards. That can't happen in the Big Ten this year because there's so many teams that Minnesota can get you in that similar aspect. So you have to be able to hang in there on the offensive glass. You have to be able to get defensive rebounds, give yourself a couple of second chance plays, but they have to be able to play even with some of these big teams on the glass or a little bit above them. And last year that was always the question: are they going to be able to be physical enough inside to withstand some of this stuff? And this year it looks like on paper they can, but I don't know yet, and we don't know yet because they haven't really been tested in that area. So everything else is, from the backcourt and in the wings, they're tremendous. But the front court is still a question for me, and I think that's still something where if those guys develop, if Mitch McGarrett develops, if Max Bielfeldt, if John Horford comes back and they all develop, then they'll be fine. But if they don't, then you really are going to have an issue going forward, and you're going to get thin, and that's something that could be a cause for concern down the road.
Well, Nick, it doesn't mean much in December, but the Wolverines should be ranked number 2 in the polls when they come out today, and we're recording this interview on Monday morning. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the highest regular season ranking since the Fab 5 days, isn't it?
Yeah, it's they were number 2 a couple times in the sophomore year of the Fab 5. So that was that year they actually started the season number 1, and they get to number 2. I don't think they got any lower than 7 that season. And everybody remembers, obviously, all the extra stuff that happened with those guys after the fact was. All that aside, everyone remembers that season for being an incredibly dominant year. And like we said earlier, they didn't win the Big Ten that year. So that's pretty interesting as well. But it's been a long time. Yeah, they should be number 2 today, and then, but it's been a while. Yeah, you're right.
Well, it's going to be a great Big Ten season. We have a lot to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Our guest today has been the Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from MLive.com. As always, Nick, it's been a pleasure, and we look forward to getting you back on the show in January and talking more Michigan hoops.
No problem, Mike. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned for Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, bowl preparations continue for Coach Hoke and the team, but as I stated at the top of the show, there really is no news getting out to the media at this point. We will hopefully have more for you on next week's first bowl preview show. Michigan hockey is off until December 29th, when they take on Michigan Tech in the first game of the Great Lakes Invitational at the Joe. It's been another rocky start, as we all know, for Coach Red Berenson's team, and they will have to get it together soon if they have any hopes of getting into the NCAA tournament next year. Michigan men's and women's basketball will both be in action at the Chrysler Center tomorrow night, Thursday. The women will put their 9-2 record on the line against Valparaiso, and the men hope to run their record to a perfect 12-0 when they hook up with Eastern Michigan. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Benefits include email reminders when a story is published or a mailbag question is answered. You also need to become a member for full participation on our always interesting message board. As a member here on GBMW, you can also take part in our popular Monday Night Live chat with E-Rock Wolverine, Coach BT, Maze Man, Doc for Blue, World's Wolverine, and our hockey guru Yoastmeister. The Monday Night Live chat takes place at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so check it out. Join GBMW today and get your daily fix of Maize and Blue news and conversation. Then each Wednesday you can listen to the Michigan Man Podcast. The show is now available as an Android app, which can be purchased from the Android App Store at Amazon.com. If you're an Apple person, you'll find our app in the Lipson box at the iTunes App Store. If you listen to the show on your Apple device, please take a minute to give us a review. It helps a lot. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your comments. If you'd like to have your Maize and Blue opinion heard, give us a call at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Then leave an audio with your thoughts on this football season, the upcoming Outback Bowl, the current basketball season, hockey, recruiting, anything that's on your mind. Just give us your name, tell us where you're calling from, and then take off. If you'd rather send us an email, our address is themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. I welcome your thoughts on anything Maize and Blue. Give us a shout. Thanks again to Nick Baumgardner from mlive.com for being our guest today. Because Christmas is next Tuesday, I will have the show published sometime Monday, which is Christmas Eve. Our guest is going to be Connor Tapp from the South Carolina blog Garnet and Black, and he hosts their podcast, which is called Half Cocked. So I hope you'll join us for that. Thanks again for joining us today, and don't forget to tell your friends about the Michigan Man Podcast. Until next time, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!